1.4 Election Laws Amendment Bill. So, the Election Laws Amendment Bill 2021 was passed by the Parliament recently, which amends the Representation of People Act 1950 and the Representation of Peoples Act 1951 to implement some electoral changes. So, we'll take a short review upon this Representation of People's Act 1950 and 1951. So, under RPA 1950, so allocations of seat on delimitation of constitutions for allocations to the House of People and legislatures of states. So, different boundaries were constituted for different constituencies. And next is qualification of voters of elections is described in this act, and even the preparation of electoral rolls procedure and process was also described in this act. And next is under Representation of People's Act 1951. It described the conduct of elections of the House of Parliaments and to the houses of different legislatures of each state. Okay, for each state of legislatures and also the houses of parliament, it described the conduct of elections. And next is, it also described the qualifications and disqualifications of members of the house, and even corrupt practices and other offense in connection with such elections, etc., are also described. So this is RPA Act 1951 and 1950. So the changes which are made in the new bill by amending this 1951 Act and 1950 Act are: first is by linking electoral roll data with Aadhar card. So Aadhar card means under by changing the section of 23 of RPA 1950. So before, under RPA 1950, the person would apply for including the name in electoral rolls, and after the verification of by electoral registration officer, the applicant name would be included in the electoral roll. So now the person should provide Aadhar card details, and if there is any errors related to Aadhar, then alternate documents which are prescribed by cultural by this central government should be provided by including the name. So if their name is already there in electoral roll, they have to update Aadhar card details. So this is about the linking electoral roll data with Aadhar card. And next is qualifying date. Here they change the qualifying date for enrollment in electoral rolls by amending section 14b of Representation of People Act 1950. So under Representation of People Act 1950, section 14b, the person who attained 18 years can enroll in the electoral rolls only after January 1st, when the roll is to be prepared. But now, after the change, the bill provides four qualifying dates, that is January 1st, April 1st, July 1st, and October 1st. And the third change is gender neutrality. They also introduced gender neutrality provisions by changing Representation of People Act 1950, Section 20, and under Representation of Peoples Act 1951, Section 60. So, this new bill replaces the term wife with spouse in both the acts. So, the next is requisitioning of premises, right? This here, requisitioning means requesting. Okay, requesting of premises for election purpose is also amended under Representation of People's Act 1951, Section 160, for premises that are used for polling stations and also for storing ballot boxes after poll has been conducted. But Under the new bill, they expanded this requisition purpose for counting storage of voting machine for counting, and also the storage of voting machines and poll related material, accommodation of security forces, and also the polling personnel. So these are the changes. Now we will study about the significance of the bill. So, first is to stop fake voting by linking electoral roll data with adding with Aadhar card. Multiple enrollment of the same person in one constituency or different constituencies can be stopped. A parliamentary standing committee report has also advised to link Aadhar ID number with the voter ID, which makes easy to change electoral ID card during change of ordinary residence by the electors. And the next importance is it can improve the accessibility of voting. So, linking two databases, that is Aadhar and voter ID, will allow Election Commission of India to track migrant workers and improve election participation. And the next importance is by introducing multiple cutoff dates, more eligible people can be registered as voters. What are these multiple cutting dates? That is January 1st, April 1st, July 1st, and October 1st. So, four multiple cutoff dates were introduced. Next is gender neutrality. So, under this general neutrality, so this bill also encourages this gender neutrality. In previous provisions, the army man's wife is entitled to be enrolled as a service voter, but for women army officers husbands there was no service vote. So to stop such discrimination against male spouse of female armed services employers, they introduced the term spouse. Spouse means any partner of service. Okay, it may be wife or it may be husband. So they introduced spouse word. So the concerns associated with the bill are, the first is the central government did not specify any details if a person can't furnish Aadhar card details. And the um, second concern is the burden to link their Aadhar shifts from the employer who do house to house verification to the citizen who might be unwilling to link his Aadhar. So this burden shifts from the employer to the citizens. And the next is the risk of depriving the citizens' right to vote might get increased. Okay, so the study in Latin America reveals that the countries with such ID, single form of ID, were likely to have fewer citizens participating in electoral process since they were unable to prove their identity. And even in 2015, media reports highlighted that lakhs of voters in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana were reportedly excluded from the electoral process due to the practice of linking Aadhar numbers with electoral ID. So, these also lead to the doubts in disenfranchisement. What is disenfranchisement? Disenfranchisement means depriving the voting powers. Okay, and next is the politicians can track the voters who have accessed welfare subsidies and benefits. So it can be used by political parties by selectively targeting their messages to the specific voters. That should not happen. So it is also one of the concern. And the bill that has passed without this is this bill has passed without putting up the legislative text for public consultation beforehand, and without any discussion it was passed. So this undermines the fundamental premise of the parliamentary democracy, that is, to allow elected representatives to the opportunity to voice the concerns of their constituents over law that affect them. So, and here, under registration of electors rule 1960, uh, under this Representation of Peoples Act 1950, clearly states that address to be the key index for electoral rolls. That might not be followed if they introduce this bill, because it has changed from address to ID proof, right? So Aadhar is only meant for identity proof and not this address process. And the next is the residents of even 182 days are also eligible for Aadhar ID. Okay, and these might not be the citizens, right? So even that person also is eligible for voting. And where is democracy here? Even the non citizens can also be voted. So, and the next concern is even enrollment processes of voters list and Aadhar are different. For voters, enrollment processes like is a physical verification, and house verification is compulsorily needed. And Aadhar card is enrolled based on the existing documents. So, even the Election Commission of India should be an independent constitutional body, whereas this UIDAI is under the government control. Okay, UIDAI controls the Aadhar, right? So, it indirectly means that electoral rolls might be under the control of government, which is unconstitutional. And the other concern is there is no publicly available audit reports either on efficiency on Aadhar or on the authenticity of Aadhar database.